wife said, if you win, we'll fly to Asia. If I win, we'll fly to Paris. I bet you won't get...
Oh my god.
Phantom Assassin has a serious problem. Despite being one of Dota's most popular heroes, her current win rate is abysmal across all ranks, with a buff to her Phantom Strike barely making a dent in her win delta. And I think the problem lies not in her with a buff to her Phantom Strike barely making a dent in her win delta. And I think the problem lies not in her kit, but instead in her build options. See, Phantom Assassin has no built-in farm mechanic, so to scale, she needs a farming item. And while some heroes can get away with a Maelstrom to help with their farming speeds, PA specifically wants a Battle Fury, which is more expensive, to synergize with her ultimate and the regen to help her sustain while clearing camps. But a Battle Fury alone is mediocre for fighting, so she'll want a damage item on top of that. Desolator is the obvious choice because of the synergy with her kit, but Desolator only gives damage. Unlike other Battle Fury carries whose core items provide some kind of survivability boost in addition to increasing DPS. For example, Manta style commonly built by Anti-Mage gives all stats, agility, move speed, and an active that can be used either offensively or defensively, and Sanjin Yasha is a great stat stick allowing melee carries like Ursa or Troll Warlord to tank up. So after second item, most PAs feel incredibly squishy, while other Battle Fury carries are able to feasibly join fights and start to make an impact even before getting a BKB. PA's biggest problem is that she lacks item flexibility. She's practically tied to getting these 3 items every game. If you skip the Battle Fury, your farming sucks. If you skip the Desolator, your damage sucks, and if you skip the BKB, you'll likely die every fight. Meanwhile, other Battle Fury carries can feasibly build things like Diffusal Blade, an early Basher, Mjolnir versus high armor enemies, and other stuff, while PA is practically forced to build the same 3 items every game with very little deviation. Thus, I believe that PA's problem isn't in her kit, but in her itemization path, and it's why I think that Phantom Assassin
Who's at fault in this Lamont Ultimate clip? So we have
One of the AO cars coming out of the pit lane, right onto the racing line. That's a tough one, man. So the guy slat the pit lane, comes straight over to the racing line. Guy in front has to avoid. That's got me in a thinking emoji right now. So the reason why I'm in a thinking emoji about this is because technically I think what the Porsche did there was probably, like, by the rules, okay, because he waited until he got to the pit exit line, then crossed the line and returned to the racing line, albeit though a fair bit slower than the McLaren who was approaching. But I think if I was race control and looking at the Delta, this is an endurance race, 194 laps. And I've just boxed, I'm the Porsche, tyres are going to be cold, brakes are going to be cold coming up the pit lane. Throwing myself over to the racing line, into the path of a car coming by at full speed, seems quite short-sighted. So I think I'd probably put this on the Porsche. It's the thing about Sebring, they move the pit lane.
Oh, here's the number. 818
here. Someone there
221.
Again, just
818.
no one's expecting this. I mean, you've got the lights and
221.
sirens, I'm sure, out there. Probably the only fair warning that anyone has. But and we have seen speeds increase a little bit. I saw that the suspect rate lead up to about 50
Why
miles an hour earlier on Rosecrans as
doesn't
well. So
the police
the suspect's getting
just
even more
shoot
desperate.
the
It
tires?
seems like just taking more and more chances as traffic just continues to pile up at these busy intersections here as rush hour is, really in full swing.
Dude!
What we're seeing right here, these last-minute turns, basically, that even makes the spike strip even less of a...
Please click the link to sign up so we can get back to you.
Right, not only that, but you need
They still got it, right?
of fairly empty road. Not empty necessarily, but
Is he gonna leave my number?
there's so much traffic as we get wrong side of the road here coming through that red light.
Okay, somebody that signed up, just text me.
I want
Just
to
add Felix at the end with XQC in parentheses.
Thanks, man. Not anything that's, crazy high speeds, crazy...
Whoa! No, I'm done.
That car just...
I didn't see, I just said, whoa, it said it.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's why this is still very, very dangerous.
That was scary.
Yeah.
And continue right now at West El
Yo, it's a slow chase, but this is like a slow burn.
Again, still
Like,
staying in the Inglewood area. This is a possible
I hate to
shooting
talk
suspect.
like this,
the
but
LAPD has had their eyes on for
it'll
quite a
have
bit. In
a
fact, we came on the air
crescendo.
early here to bring this breaking news to you.
Just continuing right in this same neighborhood. Now, okay, I want to address, we've gotten a lot of questions about why aren't they using certain tactics, why aren't they using this texting test. I want to show you this one. And there's a Twitch streamer that is watching us and streaming our feed right now. His name is XQC on Twitch. And one of the questions that he is telling viewers to text me and ask, which I've gotten a lot of this, why don't the police shoot the tires? Again, that's
It's only in movies, Mike.
Only in movies. It's a very common thing that people ask during chases. It's just not something you're going to see.
That's crazy!
I will tell you,
Joey
in
made
very,
it!
very rare circumstances, and only in the Inland Empire, and only once since I've been here, we did one time see the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department shoot out of a helicopter at the suspect. That was pretty wild. I've not seen them do that again. I've seen them give clearance to do it again, but they haven't done it since. But that's just not something you're going to see. It's way too dangerous. The car is moving. The officers are moving.
Okay, good answer. I like that. Good answer.
It could ricochet. It could hit somebody on the side. It's just very impractical to be able to do that, especially why this is moving. Another question somebody asked is why don't they block the streets? Why don't you put a bunch of cop cars in front of the guy? Again, that's an officer safety risk. It's public safety risk. If that guy decides he wants to blow through the cop cars and slam into them, that's something else they're not going to do. So.
Buka puasa, buka Fresti Blackcurrant baru. Berasa refresh beneran.
Today, we want to share with you the brushing action used in forehand loops against backspin. I've watched many feedback videos from my students, and the main issue is at the moment of contact. The brushing quality is poor, so today we'll focus on this key point. The brushing action in forehand loops against backspin. The first requirement is, You must keep your wrist relaxed. If your wrist is cocked upward, there's no room left to brush the ball. At the exact moment of contact, your fingers and wrist must have a gripping action on the racket. The brushing must involve both the wrist and fingers at contact. Applying a forward and upward brushing force. I'll break this brushing action down using slow motion demonstrations, combined with my body movement, to complete the full movement structure. Today, we're using slow motion to help you clearly see the exact moment of contact and the brushing action of the fingers and wrist. It's the same principle as the forehand. When you loop the ball, you must pay attention to your wrist. It has to stay naturally relaxed. At the moment of contact, there must be a brushing action, driven by both the wrist and the fingers.
Imajinasi, Cornetto Dish Coklat Hazelnut. Dish coklat lembut berpadu dengan es krim coklat dan hazelnut creamy. Topping
Mule. Ini apa HP?
Stay away from my Spider-Man #1. I'm Vincent Zerzolo, president of Metropolis Collectibles. Let's answer your questions from the internet. This is Collectibles Support. Metropolis Collectibles. Let's answer from my Spider-Man #1. I'm Vincent Zerzolo, president of Metropolis Collectibles. Let's answer your questions from the internet. This is Collectibles Support. Joseph Nicolo asks, what's the most expensive comic book you've ever held in your hands? Well, it's this one. This is Action Comics #1, CGC graded 9.0, the Nicolas Cage copy. And we just sold this comic book for what is now a world record $15 million. Nicolas Cage was a huge comic book collector and our best customer. This was his copy, and in 2000, it was stolen from his house in Los Angeles. We recovered it 11 years later and sold it for Nick for $2.2 million, which was a record at the time. This comic book has been in the same collection since 2011, and only recently we were able to find a buyer at $15 million. This is the holy grail of holy grails, the most important comic book, and this happens to be the highest graded copy in the world. Before Action Comics #1, we did have comic books like this one with detectives, funny animals, teen humor, but there was nothing else like it until 1938, Action Comics #1. Action Comics #1 is the first appearance of Superman and the first appearance of any superhero. People immediately fell in love with Superman and they wanted more. Without this book, we wouldn't have the cottage industry that grew out of it. Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, and have the cottage industry that grew out of it. Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, and the list goes on and on. It all started here. At John Connor asks, what's the most expensive Pokemon card and the rarest? Well, back in 2021, Logan Paul, the influencer, expensive expensive Pokemon card and the rarest. Well, back in 2021, Logan Paul, the influencer, purchased a Pikachu Illustrated PSA 10.0 for a record then $5.3 million. Why is this card so expensive? Well, only 40 copies were ever manufactured, and in 1998 they were given away at a Japanese fan contest, and this happens to be the highest graded copy known at a 10. While I don't have a PSA 10 Illustrator, I do have a PSA 10 Pikachu Van Gogh card. And what makes this really cool is it was given out at the Van Gogh Museum in 2023, and it caused a major disturbance that day. This card is worth approximately $2,500. Very rare, very tough to get, and super cool. Electronic Round 389 asks, how to grade comics and what does grading even do? To give you an idea on how to grade a comic book, I picked 3 different copies of Batman 259. A low grade, a mid grade, and a high grade copy. As we go higher in the numeric grading scale, from 1 to 10, there are less imperfections on the comic book. For instance, this 4.0 you can see has a ton of wrinkles and creases and tears. Quality is still decent and the page quality is good, but you can see that there's a lot of little imperfections on the comic book, on the spine, on the corners, paper missing, and this gets graded a 4.0 or very good. Next up, we have a mid-grade comic book, which is a 6.0. Here we see a lot less imperfections and defects, but you still have some. Overall though, a really nice looking book with great eye appeal. And last but not least, we have the high grade comic book. This one, graded a 9.0, is almost perfect. It looks just fantastic and has a great spine, very square bound, beautiful pages, and a beautiful back cover too. To get a clearer picture of the differences between a low grade and a high grade book, I'm going to show them to you together. Here you can see really easily that there are a lot more defects on this copy than there are on this copy. If you wanted to get your comic books graded, you could ship them to my company, Metropolis, or you could send them down to CGC, or you can bring them to your local comic shop. In all 3 cases, an expert will be able to look at your comic books and tell you what the grade is. If you get your comic book graded by CGC, one thing you should know is that it's not completely sealed. We have to allow for gases that are in the comic book holder to come out and for fresh air to get in. So there are, built into this system, ways for that to happen. Vinziz asks, has anyone ever bought a prop from the set of a movie? Is this even possible? It's not only possible, but there's a whole world of prop collectors out there. I happen to be one of them, and I love props. Being 1 inch closer to the movie is just such an incredible feeling. I'm gonna show you my favorite prop. This is the Cosmic Cube. It's just such an incredible feeling. I'm gonna show you my favorite prop. This is the Cosmic Cube from Captain America, the First Avenger. And I bought this at auction for $3,500. I've been offered $15,000 and I just will never sell this piece. I love this piece because it's from a pivotal point in the movie where the Red Skull is trying to get his hands on the Cosmic Cube. The auction took place at a comic book convention in Chicago. I remember taking one of my clients with me to the auction. I won this piece and he stayed behind and ended up bidding on the Captain America costume. He won it for what I thought was an insane $250,000. Years later, I got to auction that very piece off for him. Before we shipped it out, I asked my shipping guys, bring it into my office, and I got to try on Chris Evans' Captain America costume. It was amazing. Tang That Tangerine asks, any way to authenticate movie props after they're in hand? One way is to screen match them. This is a sword from Conan the Destroyer. This is the sequel to Conan the Barbarian. This movie was made in 1984, and yes, this was held by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the way you can tell if this is a real prop is by screen matching it. You can tell by the little imperfections and dings on the sword, and by looking at the film if it actually is the same sword. Collectors, auction houses, and dealers, they sit down and watch the movie frame by frame until they can tell that this is the actual piece. And there's another way to test the authenticity of a prop. It's called provenance. For example, these are the gloves from the opening scene of Enter the Dragon, where Bruce Lee is fighting against Sammo Hung in the Shaolin Temple. I saw these online on social media. They were being auctioned, and I knew I could not miss my chance to own such iconic props from one of my all-time favorite movies. Once the bidding started, it was hot and heavy, but I kept bidding. I was incredibly confident because I've been collecting Bruce Lee for over 30 years. And I kept bidding with incredible confidence because I knew these were authentic because of the provenance. Here we have a certificate of authenticity signed by Bruce Lee's student and friend, Taki Kimura. I knew these were authentic because of the provenance. Here we have a certificate of authenticity signed by Bruce Lee's student and friend, Taki Kimura. So this is a prop where you know the provenance. This was a friend and student of Bruce Lee. Notorious Amish asks, why exactly are misprints such a big deal? Well, let's take this book, for example. Venom Lethal Protector #1 had a red foil cover, except for several copies that got out to the public with just black. So the foil never made it onto the cover, making these extremely rare and extremely collectible. Why do people love misprints? People love imperfections and rarities. These pieces were not meant to get out to the public. Much like the inverted Jenny stamp, these were never meant to be held by human hands. The inverted Jenny stamp has an airplane that's put upside down on the stamp. It's incredibly rare, and it is the holy grail of stamp collecting. How valuable is the inverted Jenny? Well, in 2023, one fetched a whopping price of $2 million. Horace the Weedmaster asks, one fetched a whopping price of $2 million. Horace the Weedmaster asks, can someone explain what the different ages of comics each mean? Well, let's start off with the golden age of comics. Boom, Marvel Comics #1. This is the comic book that started the entire Marvel Universe, and it has the first appearance of the Human Torch. Golden Age comic books run from the 1930s to the 1950s and feature a lot of our favorite characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Captain America. And this CGC graded 4.5 copy of Marvel Comics #1 is worth an astounding $400,000. Next up is the Silver Age. And here we have it from the late 50s to the 60s. This is the period that launched the Marvel universe of comic book superheroes that we all know and love today. Here we have Amazing Fantasy 15, CGC graded 8.0. This is the first appearance ever of Spider-Man in a comic book, and this copy here is worth close to $350,000. What made these Marvel superheroes stand out was each one of them had a tragic flaw, something that was going wrong in their lives. If DC Comics was the establishment, Marvel Comics was the counterculture, and that's what makes the Silver Age so special. Next up is the Bronze Age of comics, the 1970s, with some of your favorite characters being brought to life for the very first time, including Wolverine in Incredible Hulk 181. This is actually his first full appearance in a comic book. This CGC graded 9.8 copy is worth a whopping $65,000. This is the holy grail of the 70s. What Action Comics is to the 30s, Wolverine's first appearance is to the 70s. For me, what makes the 70s so special is you have a lot of offbeat characters. The mutants from X-Men are becoming incredibly popular. You've got characters like Swamp Thing and Deathlock. And here we go with one of my favorite periods in comics, the Copper Age of comics, which brought to life so many great characters, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This particular issue is graded 9.2 by CGC and is worth approximately $15,000. What makes it so special is this is the introduction of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They've never appeared in a comic book before. What really makes the 1980s stand out from any other period in time in comics is the dark turn that they took, from Watchmen to Turtles to The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. These comic books really set the stage for what will end up being the modern age of comics. Mussy Girl 89 asks, do people still watch or collect VHS tapes? You know, in the last 10 years, VHS has become popular again after going pretty much obsolete. People are buying VHS tapes, watching them, and they're getting so popular, just like vinyl records, that manufacturers are starting to make new versions of VHS. VHS collecting has gotten so popular that there are grading companies like this one, VHS DNA. VHS tapes are graded just like comics or any other collectible. You look for imperfections, you see if there are any creases, any dents, any wrinkles in the plastic wrap, and then you grade them. Why would anybody collect VHS tapes? Well, in our modern age where people are being bombarded by tons of content on social media and streaming, this takes you back to a simpler day where you could focus on just the movie. Another thing, a movie like Aliens, when you watch it in VHS, it's muddier, it's inkier, and you don't get all that detail. And that's what makes it so special. It simulates what you saw the first time you saw it in the movie theater. And finally, many of these movies were never digitized, and the only way you can watch them is on VHS. You might have heard that Disney VHS is the place to be if you're a vintage VHS collector. But don't buy into the hype. The rare and limited print runs of old horror movies from the 70s and 80s, that's where it's at. Your guilty conscience asks, what's the most expensive or rare Star Wars collectible, and what does it go for? The rocket-firing Boba Fett is the rarest Star Wars collectible, and one sold for a record-breaking $1.3 million. Kenner manufactured the Star Wars line, the original line, including this Chewbacca. And what was cool about the original Boba Fett prototype was it shot out the rocket from his back. They quickly realized that kids might swallow this and get hurt. So they never went to market with it, and that's what makes it so darn rare. Since it was a prototype, only a few exist in the world, and that's what makes it so valuable. And by the way, since we're on the topic of Star Wars, about a year ago, I got to sell one of the rarest Star Wars collectibles. It was the helmet used by a sand trooper in the original Star Wars. Only 6 were manufactured, and only 3 are known to exist today. And this was one of them. I ended up selling it for a fantastic 6-figure number. Pickle121201 asks, how many X-Men first issues from 1963 do you think still exist? Well, back in the 60s, they were printing a ton of these. They used really cheap paper, so it was very inexpensive. I guess they printed originally 500,000 copies of X-Men #1. Only a fraction of those still exist today, probably in the mid to high thousands. And what I can show you right now are 4 examples. What I'm holding in my hand is probably well over $100,000 worth of X-Men #1s. When Stan Lee first came up with this comic book concept, it was about tolerance. This was during the Civil Rights Movement. And what he wanted to show was that people, even if they're different, should be loved. The original title for this comic book was The Mutants, but his publisher at the time thought it sounded like evil, bad guys, the mutants. So he turned it into the X-Men, named after Professor Charles Xavier, the leader of the X-Men. And since we're on the topic of Silver Age #1s, I want to share something else with you. Here we have a stack of Amazing Spider-Man #1. This is his very first issue, the first appearance of J. Jonah Jameson, the first appearance of the villain, the Chameleon, and it's the first time he ever meets the Fantastic Four. Spider-Man always appealed to me as a little kid because he didn't have big muscles, he wasn't a grown-up, he was a kid like me, and he had all the problems that every one of us had when we were kids. There's always somebody bigger picking on us, and you never had any money in your pocket. Maybe the girls weren't always going after you. So a lot of us could relate to poor Peter Parker's problems. These 6 copies of Amazing Spider-Man #1 are worth in total over $150,000. Here's a question from Quora. What aged vintage toys are worth a lot? Toys from the 70s, 80s, and 90s are incredibly popular and highly collected, from Star Wars to Aliens. You name it, and people love it from this time period. Now what happens is, as people get older, they hit a certain point where they can start taking discretionary income and buying things that they remember from their childhood. So collectibles, toys, go in a 30-year cycle. Right now, toys from the early 2000s, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Tamagotchi, are becoming increasingly popular. So don't throw those out. And by the way, I bought a great toy from my childhood. Check this out. This is from the 70s. And I remember getting this Christmas morning Dragoon from the Shogun Warriors. Pew, 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 pew.
Mission accomplished!
And Adria Rising asks, like, are video game collectors supposed to not play the video games they love so much? Well, there's no hard and fast rule. Some people like to play video games and some people like to collect and invest in them. If you want to collect and invest in a game, you get them certified, like this Centipede game from WATA. How do you grade a video game? It's very similar to comics, cards, and VHS. You're grading the imperfections or lack thereof on the holder, on the box, and also looking at how the wrapper is so tight, so perfect, without any wrinkles, without any tears. This Centipede video game is factory sealed from 1983 in mint condition. Graded by WATA, you can see there are no imperfections on it. The box is perfect, the wrapper is perfect, and it's great. But even if you have just a cartridge, you can also get that graded as well. If you want to start collecting video games, you can collect NES, SNES, and if you want to hit that sweet spot, that 30-year-old nostalgic resurgence of interest, go with PlayStation 1 and Xbox. By the way, I've got a great video game story. Check this out. A couple of years ago, I meet Mike Tyson at an event. He's busy, hundreds of people around him, and I finally corner him. I say, Mike, could you please sign my punch out? Grabs his pen, starts to sign it, and just as he is, somebody calls, hey, Mike, and he looks up, and he signed half of it on the spot where we cut it out, and half of it on the plastic. I'll never sell this, and it makes a great conversation piece, and it's mine. At Jay Palmiotti asks, and that's a friend of mine, super comic creator Jimmy Palmiotti, we are seeing super high prices on original comic art. Now I know for a fact more people than ever are collecting, but why do you think the prices are rising so quickly? I think what makes comic art so darn special is each page is one of a kind. This is a production piece of art from X-Men #1 by none other than Jack the King Kirby, one of the greatest comic book creators of all time. He basically invented the Marvel way of storytelling. Super bombastic fight scenes, action like you've never seen before. Comic art appreciation harkens back to several different golden rules. People are buying what they love. It's unique, it's rare, it was basically thrown away for the most part. So anything surviving is really, really valuable and really cool. You may be asking yourself, why are these in black and white and comics are in color? After this process of penciling and inking, copies were made of it, and the colorist would color those copies, and the editors would adjust the colors until they got it just right, and then sent it off to the publishers. And yes, it's true, the prices are going up and away. I bought this piece of art about 15 years ago for probably around $35,000, and I've already turned down offers of $250,000. Thirsty's New and Used asks, what is the rarest comic of all time? Is it this one? And there's a picture of New Adventure Comics 26, which is an incredibly rare book from 1938, and yes, probably the toughest DC comic to find. New Adventure 26 was printed in a very, very low print run, so there are very few survivors that have made it close to 100 years later. But on the other hand, we also have from Marvel, or Timely at the time, Motion Picture Funnies Weekly #1, which was a giveaway with the first appearance of the first Marvel superhero, Submariner. In my career of 40 years, I've only bought and sold maybe 2 or 3 copies. If somebody found a complete copy of this, at minimal, I think it would be worth about $50,000. Here's a question from the comic book collecting subreddit. What's the first comic book you ever bought that started your love of collecting? That's an awesome question, and I've got the book right here. When I was a little boy, my big brothers bought me this comic book, Astonishing Tales 31, and I didn't know who this guy was, but I wanted to figure it out. I remember going through the pages and seeing the colors and the costumes, and I could not put it down. This comic book is such a big part of why I fell in love with the whole art form and with comic books in general. The cover is by Ed Hannigan and Bernie Wrightson, who I later got to meet in person as a professional in comic books. This is the book that started it all. Official Knockout wants to know, my uncle gave me a ton of his comics that he has been collecting since the 90s to try and sell. I know nothing about them. Where would I start to really understand how to look them up and value them? One thing you can do is pick up a copy of the Overstreet Price Guide. This is the Bible of comic books and has every single comic book ever made.
Oh,
Find the value of your comic books to go to a local comic store, our offices here in Midtown Manhattan, or a great comic book convention in your location. When you go to this convention, you're surrounded by dealers from all over the country, and they can give you an idea as to what your comic books are. Lee Perezre asks, Metropolis Comic, I found my old pod collection from the 90s. How many millions of dollars is it worth? Ready to cash in? Well, since he's a member of the staff here, we're going to ask him to bring on his collection, and I'm going to do a free appraisal. Wow, it's a lot of pogs. Let's take a look at them. In the early 90s, pogs became really popular. They moved their way west, actually from Hawaii through the United States mainland. And I remember I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and these appeared out of nowhere. They're cardboard discs that feature anybody from Pocahontas to Michael Jordan. They became incredibly popular in the early to mid-90s. Pogs are generally worthless, unless maybe they're in sealed packs like this, and especially there was a set made for Jurassic Park with holographic dinosaurs on the Pogs and the Slammer, and these are collectible. In fact, a set sold recently for $2,500. If you want to know what these are worth, I actually could trade you for some Beanie Babies. Another fad, collectible. Here you
Kalau yang
go.
pelangi sih biasanya
The
yang
Beanie Babies
biasanya
craze
langsung
was
dikasih
incredible.
lihat.
People couldn't get
Enggak,
enough of
udah
these.
bisa
You
dari
buy them in
kuning
every
kan?
type of shop
Iya.
you could imagine, from comic
kan
book
dari
and
kuning.
collectible stores to
Ya
your
kalau
local
kalau dari
pharmacies.
kuning aja
They were
langsung
everywhere.
dikasih
and
lihat
some of
kalau
them
itu
were
bisa
thought
jadi
to be incredibly
pelangi kok.
scarce.
Masa? Iya.
Unfortunately, the interest in Beanie Babies died down, and the collectible aspect of them disappeared. An oversaturation of the market for Beanie Babies really caused the downfall and the lack of interest later on over the years. The moral of the story is
Langsung
try
kasih
to
lihat
collect
pintunya
things
gimana.
that have true scarcity levels to them, not
Jadi jangan capek.
manufactured collectibles.
Siap-siap aja.
And also, most importantly, buy what you
Karena
love. I remember when
kamu
I
suka
started
gacha
San Diego
satu-satu.
Comic-Con. It's probably like
Karena aku sering.
1994. And I was like, what are these? And why are people collecting little cardboard circles? Dealers were coming up, do you want to buy some
Hanya
pods?
cuma dapat voucher.
No. Wave
Oke,
asks,
ini
what is your
bangkrut,
favorite
bangkrut.
rare or valuable book
Cuma
and
dapat
why?
voucher
Well, I
aja.
happen to have right here one of my favorite pulps of all time. This is from October 1933. It is Weird Tales. And this cover is painted by none other than the legendary pulp painter Margaret Brundage. They showcase some of the greatest science fiction, horror, and fantasy stories ever.
Apa deh? Bangkrut. Turn stop tadi ada dapat sama Falcon. Bangkrut. Ini harus lompat dulu deh. Sat. Bangkrut. Reset hoki dulu. Hokinya udah kepake semua soalnya. Rumah musuh
Berarti Dabi.
berarti Nabi. Oke. Bangkrut deh. Nggak usah satu lagi kok. Ya salah.
Kepencet.
Dipencet. Ya sudahlah.
Ada yang bisa dinaikin nggak? Mangkat bingkat bintangnya.
Belum tahu. Nanti lah. Bener.
Jangan kok.
Bener gak nih?
Hah?
Bener. So, ya, my precious carrots. Ya. Ya.
Doa aja.
Nggak berubah lagi. My precious. Ya ampun. Pling. Ya ampun triple.
Air groove semua.
Air groove. Favorit star ada nggak ini? Ini putih semua.
Skip aja. Harusnya ada satu. Iya.
Wait.
Oh.
Ya.
Itu
biwa.
Bourbon itu. Oh iya biwa itu. Biwa kok.
Oh no, biwa kan jelek. Oke.
Kalau yang Natal juga jelek ya.
Jelek semua. Ya udah.
Padahal
Nice. We'll take
padahal
that.
kelihatannya keren. Padahal itu keren juga. Brian bagus gak?
Brian bagus.
Padahal saudara kok.
Waduh, Gorodosi pun tukang rusuh. El numero uno. Bener gak sih 91?
91.
Aduh bangkrut lah gue.
Bisa ambil dari sana kok.
Cuman 1.
1.
50 karat paling.
Skip aja.
Tadi kok dia nggak jadi gitu.
Kok nggak usah bang waktu kok ini bukan waktu ini bukan batchnya.
Kayak gitu.
Nggak perlu, nanti di skip langsung ke yang pelangi.
Oh gitu. Ya nge-lag. No.
Untung aja.
Skip. Tidak rendah. 90.000 dah.
Jelek banget dari tadi kok. Cuman Falco yang bagus.
Lumayan lah. Aduh bangkrut gak deh.
Event Koko masih.
Tidak, tolong gue.
Jangan khawatir, eventnya kalau masih ada eventnya Koko masih ada yang belum diambil karatnya.
Iya dikit tapi deh. Tidak. Disuruh piti deh.
Long shot.
Wah sial nih. Ini harus diliatin deh. Artinya mana Eclipse Force gak pernah datang dah.
Aku cuman palingan pernahnya Aikawa punya.
Akikawa. Yo, kau pintu Akikawa, pintu direktor. Pernah.
Sampai saya dapatnya Fuji.
Fuji Kiseki. Bangkrut gue. Stop tadi sampai ke Falcon bener dah. Udahlah.
Enggak. Ini sih cuman grinding. Ini sih grinding bintang rendah punya kok. Harus nunggu Mambo dulu.
Iya.
Sama Twin Turbo.
Mambo keluar sama siapa sih? Kitasan ya? Siapa sih Mambo? Kitasan.
Iya, Kitasan.
Perihnya.
Ini cuman grinding doh.
Oh, my hard earned carrots. Just melt it like that. Just melt it like that, Dodo. Nanti dia 199 dapat lagi. Enggak. Bangkrut. Sudahlah.
Daripada terlalu
karakter juga. Di Hono Bourbon.
Daripada nunggu terlalu lama. Keburu mati Koko.
Iya, bener. Enggak juga sih ini. Sekali aja kan. Ini enggak ada yang bagus gacha karakter. Ya udahlah. Support card.
Harus kartu terus.
Dia harus kartu terus, sekali kartu bangkrut.
Kalau kartu aku kayak Koko tuh lah.
Kenapa?
Bintang SR sama R punya.
Makanya.
Aku lebih sukanya kartu. Kayak lebih sukanya ngeroll orang daripada.
Kalau orang mah gampang soalnya. Kalau. Yeay. Ayah. Hop.
Maksimal. Kok.
Hop.
Kurang apa?
Nggak ada.
Kalau cuma sampai 4 kurang kok.
Oh ya. Wah.
Aduh, susah loh.
Iya, dersus. Gara-gara aku donasi terus.
Enggak, bukan donasi. Itu mudah itu.
Oke. Oh my god. Bangkrut. Aku bangkrut. Dulu. Oke.
Truck blazer kok, hati-hati. Nanti truck blazer
Dia capek gue. Aku bangkrut.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the zone and staying there, that feels more like luck.
Most law enforcement officers are actually afraid to go hands-on. They're afraid to deal with people like you. It's not a game.
They're not afraid to deal with us.
Absolutely.
No,
a lot of people are.
Why?
A lot of
Afraid to
people
us? We are an officer's dream.
Is there corruption? Yes. Is there self-serving people who want to promote? Yes.
That's all I'm
But
saying.
for you to say, no, well, that's not what you're saying.
Yes,
What-
it is.
No, it's not.
What am I saying?
Where's the BS button?
You guys violated your oath, or you
We're
wouldn't be here.
criminals.
Right.
You can't. We were criminals.
You
You
vi-
can't compare
but you-
us to the.
you-
If you compare us to the FBI, we're in a lot of trouble.
I'm not comparing.
Hi, I'm Michael Francis. I'm a former cop regime in the Colombo family in New York, one of the 5 New York mafia families. And today I'm surrounded by 20 cops. All right, my first surrounded claim is undercover sting operations often manufacture crime. Operations often manufacture crime. Claim is undercover sting operations often manufacture crime.
And I'm far away.
How do you
Nice
do?
to meet you. So, you believe that undercover operations create crime?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the word entrapment. So, entrapment means that law enforcement officers are inducing a reasonable person who is not predisposed to a crime to commit a crime.
Well, what do you mean a reasonable person? Not, no. In my experience, the undercover operations were either an undercover law enforcement person or somebody, a confidential informant that was put into that situation. That's not a fine, upstanding person normally. The undercover agent, absolutely.
Okay.
But not that other person.
So, I've worked undercover. I've worked undercover in multiple situations.
You're a fine, upstanding person.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And looking at it from that perspective, if I was doing a prostitution sting, walking the streets, then people weren't predisposed to committing crime, they could keep driving or keep walking right by me.
Correct.
So the fact that I and my law enforcement agency created an arena for someone to make a decision does not mean that I manufactured crime for them. I did not force them to commit crime. They made that final decision.
I agree with that, and I believe that undercover sting operations are necessary.
Okay.
You know, to catch people that you suspect of being criminals. However, there are situations that I'm very familiar with where they will use another criminal okay, to go into that, become a confidential informant, and he will help to manufacture a crime by getting people to say things that they wouldn't have ordinarily said, put them in a situation, bring them a criminal activity of some point and put them into it. So yeah, because they don't know what this other person is doing. I give you an example. Michael Francis, we know he's an organized crime guy. We got our informants told us that, but we haven't been able to catch him in a crime. So let's send somebody in there and see if they can create something to put him involved in. And then we have our crime. That's done.
It is, but sending someone in like a confidential informant, there's also a lot of controls that are on the law enforcement side.
Halo.
So whether that person is
Kate Ong dateng ya? Kate Ong main berarti? Dia coba aku jengok di grupnya.
You know, as part of the act,
Pada
they're still not causing crime to be manufactured.
pas Isa main mulai malam mudinya.
By the suspect.
Isa jam berapa? Jam berapa?
When you wire up a confidential informant, and that informant brings criminal activity to that other person, because that's the person that's the subject of the sting.
6:30 kali Isa nih.
That's entrapment as far as I'm concerned.
Iya.
That wouldn't have
Kau nak
happened
kemana?
if your confidential
Apa?
informant didn't go in and manufacture that crime.
Asli kau nak kemana? Nak mampir rumah? Kau nak mampir mana?
Understood. But if you didn't want to commit that crime, you wouldn't have to. You could walk away. You could be like, you know what? I don't want to do this robbery tonight. I don't want to put something. I don't want to.
Cindo, ang kejauhnya kok dari sana gitu, Cindo. Kate lah. Kate grup.
Yang malam aku itu lah di grup itu lah. Yang malam.
Man galak aku ini. Man galak kita main kamu. Man kalau galak main ke sana. Tapi iya, orang kejauhnya tapi gitu. Aduh main apa. Dah gitu kok ditegi lagi juga males gitu. Ini enggak kemana ya? Ya aku pam dulu ya mencet itu. Oke, aku jalan.